This is the new 2025 Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro. In this video, we're going to check out all the features, take it for a drive, and then we're going to put it to the test against our Toyota Land Cruiser. That's coming up right now on Driving Sports TV. This episode of Driving Sports TV is brought to you by Onyx Offroad. Click the link below to save 20% off your new membership using the code DSTV. For 2025, the Toyota 4Runner is finally all new, and this is what many would consider to be the top dog in the lineup, the TRD Pro. Price of this TRD Pro with a bunch of options and painted mud bath brown, you're looking at $73,568 US, including destination. At that price, you might start considering the 4Runner's more sophisticated sibling, the Land Cruiser 250. Regular viewers of the show know that we did buy a top trim first edition when it came out just last year. A little later in this video, we will be comparing their off-road capabilities. But first, let's get into the details of this 4Runner TRD Pro that Toyota sent us. This trim comes standard with the top spec iForce Max hybrid powertrain. It features a turbo 4-cylinder engine with both direct and port injection. It's combined with a 48 horsepower electric motor integrated into the transmission. Power is stored on a 1.87 kilowatt-hour nickel metal hydride battery located in the back floor. This configuration boosts peak output to an impressive 326 horses and 465 pound-feet of torque. EPA rates economy on the 4Runner TRD Pro at 23 miles to the gallon in town and 24 on the highway. The transmission in this TRD Pro is an 8-speed automatic. The four-wheel drive system is part-time and it has an electronically controlled dual-range transfer case. Beyond the looks, it's actually the four-wheel drive system that is one of the biggest differences between the 4Runner and the Land Cruiser. The 4Runner using a part-time system and the Land Cruiser using a full-time system with a torsion center differential. Both have rear lockers standard, in addition to Toyota's multi-terrain select and crawl control systems. Both also have independent suspension in the front with a coil spring multi-link solid axle in the rear. Extra goodies that are standard on this TRD Pro include the Fox QS3 adjustable shocks with rear piggyback reservoirs, a front stabilizer bar disconnect, underbody protection, and recovery points both front and rear. The tires are Toyo Open Country AT3 all-terrains in a 265/70 R18 fitment wrapped around 18-inch alloy TRD wheels. A full-size spare is tucked under the back. Normally, fuel tank size is not a topic of discussion. However, on this 4Runner, you get a 19-gallon tank. That is important because the Land Cruiser only gets a 17.9-gallon tank. And when you have that limited of range, every gallon matters. So if you are really concerned in range overall, the 4Runner is the better choice between the two. With the seats down, you do get up to 82.6 cubic feet of cargo capacity. Unfortunately, the seats don't fold all the way flat, so it's not great if you want to sleep in the back. Second row seating does have vents and power. Unfortunately, it's cramped for adults because of the bulge that hangs down from the roof. I hit my head on it all the time. Up front, you get an interior that is directly borrowed from the Tacoma. It's the same 14-inch display, same cubbies for cups and mobile devices, even the same steering wheel. You could say that the 4Runner is essentially an SUV version of the Tacoma pickup. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I actually own a 2025 Toyota Tacoma TRD Premium with the iForce Max motor. And yeah, this is all identical. They even have the little pop-out JBL speaker up front, which you can use as a Bluetooth speaker. Cool party trick. When Toyota first rolled out this massive 14-inch display, I thought it was kind of ridiculous. However, after I've used it for off-road adventures, specifically with maps, it is an absolute game changer. And nobody does off-road maps better than our sponsor, Onyx Offroad. We love Onyx Offroad for planning our off-road adventures. Which trails to drive? How hard are they? Are they even open? Onyx Offroad provides all that information in addition to tools to help plan and organize your next adventure. Have you watched one of our mini road trip videos? We use Onyx Offroad to plan and navigate every adventure. And right now you can get 20% off your premium or elite membership to Onyx Offroad with the code DSTV. That's of course an abbreviation for Driving Sports TV. Look for the link in the video description below or click this QR code. The seats in this 4Runner are actually quite nice. It is a little surprising that they don't actually have an embroidery saying TRD Pro here, but at least they didn't put those isodynamic seats that you get in the Tacoma TRD Pro. The isodynamic seats are amazing, but with them you get no room in the second row. Like literally there's no leg room at all. This one you can at least put a mid-size person in the back there. The steering wheel is wrapped. I do prefer the steering wheel of the Land Cruiser. I like its simplicity and just the way that it feels on my fingers, but this is admittedly a cool steering wheel. And of course they've integrated both the functions to control the digital gauge cluster as well as the adaptive cruise control, which is standard on, I think, every single Toyota sold these days. Well, at the very least, it's standard on this one. On the inside, this interior matches its kind of hyper-masculine exterior as well. Everything is big, chunky knobs, easy to access. You got these like metallic little switch buttons down there. You have really easy access to your phone. Overall, I think it's actually kind of a great interior with lots of usable bins and cubbies, something that the Land Cruiser is definitely lacking. Now it's time to take this for a quick drive on the street, and then we're going to bring it back here to our Peninsula Proving Grounds, where it's going to face off against the Toyota Land Cruiser in a new off-road challenge. But before I hit the street, there's one more thing that I have to do. I have to adjust the suspension. Whereas most modern vehicles with adjustable suspension allow you to do it inside the cab, this one actually has little dials on each shock with 3 different firmness settings. Okay, there's one shock. Well, I'm glad I checked those. The previous journalists who had them, or last couple of journalists, they were actually all set to different settings. You want to screw up the way a car handles? Yeah, have every shock be totally different. Okay, let's drive this. So we are set for the stiffest setting on those QS3 shocks, so need to remember that. Right, so I'm going off gravel and onto pavement, so I'm going to switch it from 4 high to 2 high. Sounds pretty good. Nice. Now, do we have drive modes? Yes, we do. We have Sport, Normal, and Eco. Let's go ahead and keep it in Sport. So, stiffest shocks. Sport setting. Let's have some fun. So let's try a 0 to 60. I'm going to line up here and we're just going to floor it. Now keep in mind this is rear wheel drive where the Land Cruiser is 4-wheel drive all the time. 3, 2, 1, punch it. Oh, and 60. 7.21 seconds. So why is this almost a second faster than the Land Cruiser when I last tested it in a video about a month ago? The Land Cruiser did 8.3 seconds in 0 to 60. So why is this one almost a second faster? Well, I think it comes down to the fact that it's basically rear wheel drive. All the power is going to the rear wheels. You have less parasitic loss in the powertrain. Also comes down to tuning and the fact that we actually have heavier wheels and tires on the Land Cruiser. So all those things add up to a slower 0 to 60. Now I'm going to test to see if parasitic loss was actually a contributor to a slower 0 to 60. So I'm going to switch this into 4 high. Normally you wouldn't do that on a paved surface, but we are going to be driving straight here, so I think it's okay. And let's see if all 4 wheels powered cuts down our 0 to 60. 3, 2, 1, go. And 60, 7.58. So it did cut down the 0 to 60 a little bit. I think definitely the bigger, heavier wheels, tires on the Land Cruiser could contribute to another half-second loss. So I think basically at the end of the day, it's a bit of a wash. But the important thing is that when you're actually driving this around in 2-wheel drive mode, it does feel a lot quicker because it is. We are going to focus mostly on off-road capabilities in this review, but you do have to drive around town with pretty much any rig that you own. And yeah, I got some thoughts about this 4Runner. First off, that hood, it is wiggling a ton. So first off, you have an aluminum hood. Second off, you then put this big kind of fake air scoop on the front. It does a lot of this. I don't know if you can see that in the camera right here, but trust me, it's a little annoying. The Land Cruiser has a little bit of flap too, but it's not nearly as bad as it is on this one. Seating position's pretty good. This is exactly like my 2025 Tacoma TRD Off-Road. Like, honestly, no difference at all. We got the JBL sound here, which is part of the premium pack if you go with like a TRD Off-Road, but it is standard on the TRD Pro here. That also includes, of course, the huge 14-inch display, dual zone climate, seats that are heated and cooled. Let's try that seat heater out. How toasty does that get? If you watch the show, you know that a few years ago I did own a Toyota 4Runner. It was a TRD Off-Road Premium, which I think I bought for like $42,000. Man, that seems like so long ago now. Anyway, I loved that 4Runner. It was so much fun. I did so many adventures with it, drove across the country with it, up and down a couple times. It was great, but it wasn't perfect. Obviously, there was a lot of improvement to be had. First and foremost, that 4-liter V6, it was pokey. It might last forever, but you're gonna take forever to get to your destination. That thing, it just wasn't very fast. And going up hills, it kind of struggled a little bit. I mean, not as bad as the V6 in the Tacoma. That thing was its own kind of special. But it wasn't a big performer. So obviously with this new 4Runner, they've made a huge leap in performance going with this hybrid iForce Max system. That 48 horsepower electric motor integrated into the transmission produces by itself close to 200 foot-pounds of torque from 0 RPM. That transforms what the 4Runner is. I'm not saying that to justify a $70,000 4Runner, but this isn't really the same vehicle as before. This has been transformed into a higher performance, more capable, and more expensive vehicle. So let's look at it for what it is. Where the previous 4Runner was pretty wallowy on the roads, it was always way too soft, this one in the stiffest setting is actually pretty nice on pavement. I can feel a lot of the road surface, which is kind of weird for a 4Runner. One of the other issues with the old 4Runner was, of course, nosedive when you're braking. Let me put my brakes on. Yeah, very well controlled nosedive, practically none. That is a huge performance improvement because, of course, before when you slam your brakes on, it kind of felt like you're a little out of control. Yeah, we don't have that problem anymore, which is nice. The seats are actually getting pretty warm. That's kind of a toasty heating setting. Now, it's not as hot as, say, Ford, which I think I could fry an egg on some Ford seats, but I think, yeah, it's actually pretty nice. With this synthetic, works great. Nobody's going to complain about that. The design of this obviously has a bit of a chopped roof look, makes it look meaner, more aggressive. Visibility isn't as good as in the Land Cruiser because I just don't have as much vertical visibility here, and like I'm constantly hitting things. Back 3/4, a little difficult to see out of as well, but overall visibility is at least acceptable. I'm not finding anything where I'm like, whoa, 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 hold the phone. This actually, I think, is pretty good. Okay, pop through the corners here. What do we got? Ooh, yeah. I mean, body roll is actually really well controlled now. This track's pretty nice. And so much power. Of course, this does drive in 2-wheel drive mode while you're on the street, which means it is rear-wheel drive. So it's a very different driving experience than what you get in the Land Cruiser, which is full-time 4-wheel drive. Big difference. So you don't want to put this into 4-high while you're on pavement because it's too high of a grip situation. When you're turning, your front wheels actually track a longer distance than your rear wheels. Because of that, when 4 high, you're locking that transfer case in the middle, which means that there's no play between the front and the back. So that means that when you're turning, you're binding up pressure because it cannot be released on the pavement. It has to build up in the powertrain, and that is not good for the system. So you only want to be in 4 high in slippery conditions so that the wheels and tires can get rid of that excess tension that would otherwise build up in the system. With the Land Cruiser, it has a torsion center differential, which takes care of that. I do like the sound of that exhaust, especially when wheedling around town. It's like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Sounds good. Of course, being 2025, this is loaded with the latest in active safety, and that's actually one of the huge improvements over the old 4Runner. We get collision mitigation, we get blind spot warning, full surround view camera system with nice cameras now. If you're loaded all up with gear, you do get a digital rear view mirror here, which uses the camera in the back so you can see all the way behind you. And of course, we now have finally adaptive cruise control with lane centering. Let's go ahead and turn that on. Just click a button there, set a target speed, it's 45 here, and then it'll gap the vehicle in front of me. And further, when I do lane centering, it will track down the middle lane. I find the Toyota system in general is pretty good, and it's exactly what I expect to see here. Very nice. Right, so how good is it off-road when compared to the Land Cruiser First Edition that we have? We're now going to go to our Peninsula Proving Grounds to put it to the test. To 4 high, we're going to kick off with some high-speed dirt road action. Woohoo! Oh, you know what? I just remembered suspension is set for stiff. Oh, we need to change that. Okay. Right. I totally forgot. Manual suspension adjustment. Right. Okay, let's go full soft. Okay, softest setting. Let's do this. Whoever decided to do manual adjustments on these, you're fired. Okay, let's try this again, shall we? Already, I can tell a huge difference. Now, it is interesting to note that in 4 high here, this is locked 50-50, whereas the Land Cruiser actually has a rear bias. So if I'm throttling in here, yeah, it's a different experience. Oh, and then, oh yeah, so much better. Yeah, that's soaking up the stuff now. Right. Ow. Got my head on the roof there, though. That low roof, not loving that. Okay, well, let's take a quick look at the Land Cruiser before we kick off the off-road section of this review. This is the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser First Edition that I bought for the channel last spring. Since then, I've put almost 20,000 miles on it, and a lot of those have been off-road. Now, what you see here is completely stock, with the exception of the wheel and tire package, which I did upgrade. The stock wheels and tires were Michelin LTX trail tires, which were basically all seasons. They weren't a acceptable all-terrain tire for me. So I upgraded them to the Falken Wild Peak AT4W HDs. These are a 10-ply, extra rugged all-terrain tire. And they are wrapped around Toyota Tundra 9-spoke OEM wheels. Everything else you see here, completely stock. Because this was a first edition, it was very expensive. However, you don't need to spend this much money to get a Land Cruiser nicely equipped. This has leather interior, it has rock rails standard, it has mud flaps, it has more extensive underbody protection than even the TRD Pro, and it comes with a roof rack. So at this point, you're probably saying, these vehicles look very similar. What is the difference? Let's make a quick list. There's not a lot, but they are pretty significant. First off, you have part-time four-wheel drive versus full-time four-wheel drive. You have three-way adjustable Fox shocks. You have a fixed position shock. Lower roof line, higher roof line. With the TRD Pro, you get a synthetic leather interior. With the Land Cruiser, you can get real leather. And then finally, this one sounds like a Toyota Tacoma. That one, oddly enough, sounds like a diesel, even though they're the exact same powertrain, which is really funny. Oh yeah, this one you can run on regular fuel. That one requires premium. In short, I think the differentiation between the two is the obvious one. This one's built for America. That one is built for an international audience. In terms of dimensions, a stock Land Cruiser has 8.5 inches of ground clearance. 4Runner TRD Pro gets 10.1. Approach on the Land Cruiser is 32 degrees, 4Runner 33. Land Cruiser departure is 22 degrees and the TRD Pro is 24. So even with the extra ride height on the 4Runner, these two vehicles are pretty closely matched. With all of that covered, let's see how they compare on our newly revised logging trail. And we're gonna start with the TRD Pro. You know, it's kind of funny. When I bought the Land Cruiser last year, this comparison was one of the things that I had. Whenever you buy a new car for a channel like we do, you always put together a chart of like, okay, what are some of the comparisons, adventures, and stuff that we can do with it that, you know, would help us learn the vehicle, but also what do you guys want to see? And obviously one of them is Land Cruiser versus TRD Pro 4Runner. And here we are, delay after delay after delay with the 4Runner. We finally have it here. And I can't wait to take this thing off-road. If you watch the channel for a while, you are familiar with our logging trail. However, it has been upgraded recently. And so this is actually going to be way more complicated than the last time we did a shootout here. To set up the vehicle here, I know we're going to be hitting some challenging stuff. I'm going to go ahead and go into 4 low. Part of that reason why I'm hitting 4 low before I actually need it is because Toyota just basically reserves a lot of the off-road tools for the 4 low setup. If you're in 4 high, you can't do things like engage that rear locker. So now in 4 low, that's great. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the front stabilizer bar. I'm not going to lock that rear yet though, because I feel like I don't need to or want to. And we're going to go down here and let's take a look at obstacle number 1. Also, let's bring that camera up. Oh yeah, nice trail cam. So this is tight, and I designed it that way on purpose. Let's take a quick look. Okay, I really like this section. Basically, we have a drop into a hole, and this is going to test both approach, breakover, and departure angles, especially here where there's a root from that tree there. We then come back up over this rise, and then we have some side-to-side tilts that will really test the 4-wheel drive systems on these vehicles. Now this vehicle is not equipped with rock sliders or root sliders as it may be. So we have to keep an eye out on that. Now you can option them. They're about $1,000. My Land Cruiser did come with them. The TRD Pro does not have them. However, if you want to spend the same amount of money as on a TRD Pro, you could always get the Trail Hunter version of this vehicle, and that does have the rock sliders. Okay, view angle on. Look for that front wheel to reach down. Now we've disconnected the front sway bar, so that's going to give more articulation to the front. It's usually an Achilles heel of independent front suspensions. Oop, it's soft. We're going down. How's that nose looking? Okay, looking for any rubbing here. And then let's see if that tail rubs at all. Listen, listen, listen. Yep, I think the hitch rubbed. I'm going to go into this side tilt. Oh, it's so soft. And then we have a transition from one side tilt to the other, which will remove traction off these two wheels. When doing a tilt transition like this, it would be helpful to have a front locker. This clearly doesn't have it. Toyota doesn't put it on their 4Runners. So instead, I'm going to engage multi-terrain select, and I want the least amount of wheel spin. Let's just do rock, and that'll isolate the wheels so that if a wheel starts spinning, it'll use brakes to lock it down, which will push power to the other wheel. And then here I'm also going to lock my rear axle. Usually it takes a couple rotations before that kicks in. Okay, we've already locked it in. And now this is very tight. Let me get that seesaw motion here first. Oop. There we go. With everything locked up, we're doing just fine. Go about the roundabout. Lifting that back tire. So you can see at this point that that front driver's side wheel is not even touching the ground. Here we go. I'll watch my inside and see if we can just rotate around this with minimal wheel spin, so we don't want to dig ourselves into the sand. Yes, those are parking sensors, and yes, I will shut them off soon enough. Okay, and out we go, on to the next challenge. Okay, this next section I have made a little bit more challenging. Before we had a couple ditches, now we have an extra one, and I've also made them deeper. I need to turn off those parking sensors, right. By the way, I'm doing all of this with the standard tire pressures, which they delivered this to me with 35 PSI all around. So in this section, I actually want to show just how capable the multi-terrain select system is. So I'm going to deactivate the rear locker. Instead, we're going to go straight MTS on this. And I'm also just going to go ahead and do auto. So what this will do is basically use their brake vectoring system to shift power from one wheel to the other. No lockers, front or back. Of course, the middle is locked because the transfer case is engaged in 4-low. Turn on the camera. Just line it up. And see how this does. See how aggressive this brake vectoring system is. And you can also see articulation here. How well the back reaches down to get us up. Just walks up it. Like, didn't even need a locker. And the nice thing about not locking stuff is that you still have full control over turning. Because obviously if that rear locker was engaged, it makes turning more difficult. Then we're just going to go down the slope. Now, a lot of things rub here. Let's listen if this one does. Nope, we have enough ground clearance, no rubbing on the brake over. So this and the Land Cruiser both have, by the way, we're over 30 degrees here. They both have the same 112.2 inch wheelbase. So yeah, it's just one of the many things that these two vehicles have in common. But we're not done yet. Let's go over to the rocks and see how it does over there. I have another feature that we're going to test here, and that is crawl control. So crawl control will basically use both power and brakes to aggressively shift things around the system to move you forward in complicated off-road conditions. I could do it with a locker or without, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it in multi-terrain select. We are on rocks, so let's go ahead and set the rock setting. Going to keep it in drive, and now I'm going to hit crawl here, and I have 5 different speeds I can go. I'm just going to go low, which should basically inch us forward at around 1 mile per hour. Stabilizer bar is disconnected and 4-low. And put my camera up, and I can just focus on driving. So this is a very advanced system that does a lot more than what we're looking at here. If you're buried up to your axles in sand, this has logic to get you out of those conditions. Fortunately, I don't have a bunch of loose beach sand to show you that. But on rocks here, it also allows you to focus on your line, which is, you know, kind of important. And it just inches forward. Now this has had years of development, and the newest version here with the iForce Max Hybrid is the quietest version yet. It used to always sound like the vehicle was braking, not so here. Okay, at this point, it's just gonna climb us up. Now we have rocks on the left and we have loose surface on the right here. And just gonna go up, watch those wheels as they're thinking about the surface, And moving us forward, going to climb up on the log here, a little bit of a diagonal. No problem. It really makes off-roading very easy. It's thinking here. And there we go. So now we're going to run the Land Cruiser through all those same tests. We're going to see, is there a difference? Is this one really that much better or worse? Having owned a 5th generation 4Runner, I really understand the love for the roll down rear glass. I mean, that's very cool. You can have the window down while you're driving, get nice airflow through there. I love it. But what about when the vehicle is on? Okay, the vehicle is started. I have the key. Won't let me put down the glass while it's running. Okay. Now let's take a look at the pop-up glass on the Land Cruiser. Car is currently not running. I have the key, vehicle's on. There you go. So if you're on the side of a mountain road, you want to stop the vehicle and let it idle while you go into the back and quickly grab something. Yeah, with the Land Cruiser, you can. With the 4Runner, you gotta shut it off if you want to get that rear slide down to work. Not cool. Man, it is great to be back in this. I really like this vehicle. I just do. I like it way better than I thought I would. I put 18,143 miles on it. And man, some of those have been really fun. We got a whole bunch of videos here on our YouTube channel. Be sure to check those out. So at this point, I took the 4Runner out on the street. I drove it through the off-road course. I'm not going to take this one out on the street right now just because I've done tons of videos with that. There's not going to be anything new. It basically drives very similar to the 4Runner. It is a little bit slower, as I discussed, and the suspension here is a fixed rate Tokiko shock, and it is a little bit more on the soft side. I like it though. I think it's really nice and it matches nicely to the vehicle. There is no adjustability, but on the other hand, you don't have to crawl under the vehicle for any reason. We have a totally different layout here. That's fine, smaller display, but I still think it's a very useful one. And then we also have, of course, all of our control functions down here for the 4-wheel drive system. I don't need to put it into 4-wheel drive here simply because it already is. And I can turn without the wheels binding up because it does not lock that center section. I can if I want, but I don't need to. And then when I add throttle in corners here, it'll actually kick the back end out because it is a rear bias setup, not a straight 50-50 lock. Now on the hard stuff here, yeah, pretty comfortable, all things considered. Like I said, it is on the soft side, but I still find it very comfortable, even on the street. But it definitely does dissuade you from trying to like peel through the corners. The 4Runner definitely feels faster on pavement. I would feel more comfortable driving that quick than I would this. And it all comes down to suspension. When that's in stiff, it definitely feels better on the street than this one does. But the Land Cruiser is not about that. It is a cruiser, and you're not going to be like, you know, hustling through the corners with this thing. You can, but it's going to be a little rolly. So at this point, I am going to set up the vehicle by locking the center torsion diff. That means that it'll basically be a true 4-high setup, just like was in the other vehicle. I'm not going to lock the rear diff yet, but I am going to disconnect the front stabilizer bar. Yes, this also has that feature. It is an option on lower trim Land Cruisers, but it was standard on this first edition. And I gotta say, man, this steering wheel, I love it. It feels so nice. This is quality leather, and it feels better than the 4Runner steering wheel. Also, these seats, yeah, real leather, it just feels nicer. Now we're gonna go down here and try some 4-wheel drive features. One of the nice things about this particular trim is that it did come with rock sliders. Now I actually added these same rock sliders to my Tacoma, and Toyota sells them, and they're actually really good for an OEM rock rail. You can actually jack up using a high lift jack with them. So they are very strong, and they do bolt to the frame, and this is a body on frame build, of course, and it will attach to the frame, not to the body. I'm just going to dip a wheel down here, and let's put our camera on. Now the nice thing is that because the 4Runner went through first and the surface is soft, I can just see what we got. Now this does have less ground clearance than the 4Runner, which might cause a little more rubbing here. Back is going to go down. Oh, yep, a little rub in there, not too bad. And then on to, let's see the other views. I don't like that view. Let's go to, oh, you know what? I forgot to go into 4 low. Like, that's not the right camera. This isn't moving correctly. Okay, let's put it into 4 low. Neutral. There we go. Now I get a proper trail camera. I swear. Okay, moving forward. Because I just excavated this about a month ago, it's still a very loose surface. Over time, this will compact, and its character will also change. But for right now, it's pretty good for this. We got a nice tilt going on there, around 25, maybe a little less. Now we're going to dip over. That wheel's going to lose traction. That wheel's going to lose traction. Let's turn on. Did I do it with a locker last time? I think I did. I don't even remember what I did. Okay, yeah, let's turn on the locker here. This is where I turned it on last time. And then we're just going to roll forward. Oh, and I have no front locker. A front locker would be good here. Instead, I'm going to use multi-terrain select, just like in the 4Runner, and we'll keep it in, let's just do auto. That's fine. And here we go. Look for that wheel braking in the front, if you can see it, and in the back, the rear is locked, I can confirm. So that's just going to have both wheels turn at the same exact rate. Rear wheel clear. Oh, we're dragging a little bit, so I had to go straight a little bit. Not quite the same line, but close. Obviously, no problem there. Now look for the articulation in the back. Like before, I am going to turn off that rear locker. We don't need that. And I'm just going to leave it in multi-terrain select auto. Center diff is locked, front and rear are open. MTS is our only traction control. I get the same line as before. Look for that articulation, wheel spin, brakes kicking in, moving us forward, no problem. And it is so much quieter than the old MTS system, which always sounded like somebody was banging on the vehicle with, you know, rocks. The drop, I'm going to listen for any grinding. This does have those rock rails on the side, so they hang down a little bit further. Plus, of course, we're starting with a lower ground clearance as well. Oh, no rubbing anymore. I guess I've worn it down with all the vehicles I've taken over this. Okay, we got, tail drug. One more test, and then we're going to wrap this up. So I don't anticipate that there'll be any difference between this and the 4Runner TRD Pro regarding the crawl control system, but let's give it a try anyway. One nice thing is that I can disable the center locker even while in 4 low, and then go to crawl, drive, low crawl, and let it do its thing. So the reason to turn off your center locker is to get tighter turning radiuses without that binding even on dirt. It's kind of a neat party trick that you can do with this vehicle. Just crawl over, let's turn on that front camera, try to get a similar line. Again, I'm just letting the vehicle do the driving. I have no foot on brake, none on gas. I can override those at any time if I need, but so far, no big deal. I'm not rubbing on anything, I'm not bumping, at least not yet. climb up here. This actually, even for the limited ground clearance, it has really good approach and departure angles for the class. Much better than you would normally find. Oops, a little bump back there. Let's turn off parking sensors. Yeah, it's actually a push button on this one, which is nice. And we're just gonna climb up. Rocks on the inside, a little sandy on the outside. We go over the telephone pole and up and over. Again, it's just figuring it out. And away we go. Come on, it has to think about that last break. There we go. Okay, well, both these vehicles are very impressive and they're very capable, more capable than most people would need. If you need to do something more like dedicated rock crawling, obviously the answer, you gonna say it? Yeah, Jeep Wrangler. But if you need something that just has really nice, really capable off-road skills, looks great, very comfortable to drive, either of these I think is a good choice. But which one would I pick now that they're both available? What we have here are two very capable mid-size SUVs. They're also very expensive. However, if you have the means and you want the capability, these are great options. So which one of these do I prefer? It's probably no surprise that I'm going to pick the Land Cruiser. I really like this TRD Pro, but I don't think that you're getting your money's worth with it quite so much as you are with the Land Cruiser. And yes, the Land Cruiser is pretty expensive, but you can get it nicely equipped in the mid-60s, and with that full-time four-wheel drive with the Torsen center diff, it really makes it a more friendly four-wheel drive system. This one looks amazing, and thanks to extra ground clearance, it is technically more capable than the Land Cruiser by a little bit. That said, the interior cabin space, second row, can make this a deal killer for some. It's just way too cramped in that second row for a vehicle of this size. Land Cruiser doesn't have that problem at all. I could wear a cowboy hat in there. So which one would you pick? Post a comment below. For Driving Sports TV, I'm Ryan Douthit. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, share videos. We make them for you. Hope you enjoy them. Hope you enjoy this shootout, and we'll see you again right here on the next video.